Hi, how are you doing today? This is Mr. Chang from EnglishTuition.org. Today's video, we will be doing a final revision for the O-levels English exam, which is just around the corner, taking place sometime in the middle of October. As of the release of this video, I think you still have like close to 8 weeks. I think just about 7 weeks, right, of revision time. So there's still time to figure out, some of the bits and pieces here and there, and hopefully you find this video useful. So let's get started. We'll start off with the paper 1, okay, for the O-levels exam. And paper 1, the very first component when you flip open the exam paper would be your editing. Now your editing is 10 marks. So before we go further, I have a challenge for you. Try to get a perfect score, right? I think you have to go for it, right? This is the O-levels. You can always get editing practices almost everywhere, right? From assessment books, from past year papers, from some of the other schools, or even from your own schools, from a 10-year series, right? You can always practice and set yourself the challenge to get a 10 out of 10. I believe that will give you a bit more confidence going to the exam, because grammar is everything in the language paper. Because if your grammar is weak, you're not just aiming for a score in editing, it will affect all the other aspects of the paper as well. So the editing exercise is a very good way to keep your grammar in check. And if you're getting like 8 upon 10, 9 upon 10, and even 10 upon 10, right, then you would be able to go to the exam with a higher level of confidence. All right, so a quick tip for you is to always check the tenses first. I can't emphasize this enough, right? Because sometimes when I get new students and they're still in the progress of making some improvements, I mark their work and realize that a lot of times that's not the first thing that they check, right? And then they get all the tenses wrong. Okay, and don't do the exercise blindly, right? Most of the time, if you check the text itself and it is in the past tense, right? So then you're going to look for the mistake, to look for verbs that are in the present tense, right? You circle them and then you change it to the past tense. But that's not always the case. So read carefully, because sometimes there may be a change of tense within the text itself, right? So the first part could be past tense, and then there are some sentences that are embedded in the text that are supposed to be in present tense. So if you assume that everything is in past tense, you're going to make mistakes, right? Some of my students even wrongly mistaken that past tense is the only tense that they should change to, right? And then they did not realize that the exercise given to them is supposed to be in the present tense, right? So they just happily go around just circling all the verbs, present tense, they're all wrong, right? But so they end up failing the exercise. So even a simple careless mistake like this can affect the overall performance of your editing exercise. I think for your revision, please go back and revise all the grammar rules. That's why if you have this challenge, right, you have this goal that you want to score a perfect score, it's kind of difficult unless you're strong in grammar, right? So if you find that you're not getting close to a perfect score, at least 7 or 8 out of 10, you're getting 5 upon 10, 6 upon 10, 4 upon 10, then that is a sign that your grammar foundation is not good enough. And we still have time, about 7 to 8 weeks, that you can go back to revise all the grammar rules, your subject-verb agreement, what connectors that you should be using, or have you forgotten about some connectors, right? And what prepositions to use, etc., etc. So we can't possibly do entire grammar revision. That would be, it would take several weeks of lessons. In fact, my students currently right now, they are doing their final revision. So we will be going through all that in our face-to-face lessons. But for students who are not attending my lessons, you can always go back, just pick up a grammar book and go and revise all your the basic grammar rules. So with that said, let's move on to the next section, right, which is the situational writing. And situational writing is worth a total of 30 marks, right? And just a reminder, this is the same weightage as the essay, so it's not any less important, right? So if you don't emphasize on the situation writing, then it's going to pull down your scores. So read the task carefully and vet your answers with your teachers. Now you may think that this is like no, an unnecessary step. Well, I could just practice on my own. But the problem that I have with this is that a lot of times when I ask students if they have handled the task in their school exam, for example, right? If they have handled the task properly or correctly, every one of them will say yes, 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 right? Okay, nobody come back and say, I'm not sure, I'm not confident. So, but when I vet through their answers, it almost always, right, turns out that they have not truly answered the task, right? The task means that for those of you who have forgotten, the task usually is those are the bullet points, right? That should be about 3 or 4 bullet points in the situation writing exercise. And usually it is because they have either misread or misinterpreted the task. In other words, they did not understand what the question is asking them. Okay, and then given that this is an open-ended, writing exercise, okay, they tend to make mistakes, and as a result, they get 5 upon 10 or 4 upon 10, right, for the task fulfillment. Okay, and the next tip I have for you here is to revise some of the commonly used vocabulary for situational writing. So for this, you should refer to your notes or any of the model answers that you may have. Right, for example, I eagerly look forward to your visit near the end of your informal writing, right? And the tone in this case would be warm and welcoming. Okay, simple phrases like this, just instead of just saying I look forward to your visit, right? I eagerly look forward to your visit. These are the small little things that are going to make a difference in your writing, right? But if you're going to keep doing it throughout the entire piece of writing, you will be surprised at the improvements that you have made. And that is very important because they contribute to your language score. Okay, your language score is worth 20 marks out of 30 marks in the situation writing exercise. All right, so put in a bit more effort. Okay, memorize some of the commonly used vocab, expressions, etc. And try to do well for the SW exercise. Then the final component is the essay writing, okay, which is 30 marks. Well, for students who are weak in writing, some of you may be fearful of this exercise. Well, again, there's still time, so just practice a bit more. And now is the time to implement a bit of strategy, right, into this particular component. Okay, now this section itself has a total of 4 questions. So you can choose the question. Now, for students who don't practice essay writing, usually when they start choosing the question, they always base it on, do I think that is easy or not, right? Can I relate to the question? Oh, I think I can relate, so I think it's very easy for me. I think that would be a mistake because students' judgment on whether a question is easy or difficult is usually flawed, right? Especially those who don't practice. How do you know by choosing a discursive essay or an argumentative essay would play to your strengths, right? That you would score well for this type of essay. You wouldn't know due to lack of practice, all right? So in order to do well for this component, I do believe over time, students have to work on a variety of essays, right? You have Stack 3 and Stack 4 to do so. So there's no excuse to say that, no, well, I've never done argumentative before. I've never done discursive before. By now, every student would have tried various types of essay. Now, but now is the time to not be stubborn, right? And look at the data objectively and just choose the question based on your strengths rather than your own internal assessment which could be biased, right? And you think that, oh, this essay is very easy. That's usually not the case, right? If you're strong in personal recount, there's no shame in choosing personal recount. That doesn't mean that personal recount is easy. personal recount is not easy for everyone, right? I've seen students who do better at discursive essay. So my point is, choose the essay that plays to your strength, and it's up to you to know what your strengths are, right? What are the type of essays that you tend to excel in, and choose those questions. So your choice of question is very important. You choose the wrong question, that's like throwing your marks down the drain. Okay, it's going to be a borderline pass or even fail. All right. Go through the test series and check if you have limited choices. Right, there are only 4 questions for each year. So if you find yourself having limited choices, then there's only one way forward, and that is you need to master more question types. How we are going to do that, I'm not sure, right? Just keep practicing. Submit essays to your tutors, submit essays to your teachers. Let them go and mark additional essays, right? Or go and dig up some notes or assessment books with model essays, and focus on the question types that you want to specialize in, okay? And finally, don't forget to revise the basics of essay writing, right? The planning, the organization, the structures, right? If you're specializing in discursive, right? How do you go about writing a proper PEEL, right? If you remember what's PEEL, right? I won't go through that in this video. You should try to master that, just to be prepared for the O-levels exam. Okay, let's quickly move on to the O-levels English paper 2. Now we start off the paper with the visual comprehension, which is worth 5 marks. And the new syllabus should not affect your understanding of this exercise at all. In fact, most of my students tend to do better with the new syllabus because of the MCQ. So focus on the understanding. Understanding, what do I mean? Right, for example, what is the primary purpose of the visual, and you start from there. Your purpose will be your compass. Without this purpose, you're not giving the visual a lot of context, and that will not help you with the exercise, right? And of course, revise all the other basics, for example, knowing the target audience, etc., right? For example, if you get an exercise with a photograph of an adult versus an adult together with a group of children, and the visual, the primary purpose of the visual is to recruit teachers, right? Recruit teachers, so you're showing the adult is likely to be a teacher, right, with a group of students. And who do you think the target audience is? Is it for the kids? Obviously it's not, because it is a recruitment poster meant to recruit teachers, right? It's the adults, or those who are considering taking on teaching as a career. Okay, so knowing all these basics, having all this understanding will help you with the answer, right? Otherwise you'll focus on the wrong part of the picture, right? You will talk, you will say something like the photographs shows a bunch of happy children, and this will help attract the audience, which is wrong. Okay, so pay attention to that. Okay, now very quickly, let's move on to the next section. Now this is where the meat of the paper is, right? The visual comprehension is 5 marks, but that's still important, right? But narrative comprehension is worth a whopping 20 marks, all right? And this narrative means story-based text, okay? Please read the text, passage, and questions carefully. I always tell my students that for a comprehension paper, any comprehension exercise, right, reading skills is like 50%, even 60%, because if you are not understanding part of the text or even part of the question, then your answers are going to be irrelevant and you get 0, right? It doesn't matter how good your grammar is, it doesn't matter how strong your vocab is, you're going to get 0 because you didn't read the text, passage, and questions carefully, right? Some questions can be very lengthy in O-levels, right? So take the time, try to break it down, all right, before you answer the question. Now understand that paraphrasing is essential, right? And for those who think that I can try to aim for a C6, that means students who tend to aim low without having to paraphrase, then I think that's a very risky approach. The odds of you succeeding would be very low. Okay, when I teach my students, actually, because I know this, I actually don't give them a choice. They have to learn paraphrasing and they have to try. Okay, if you don't paraphrase, it means that all the language questions that expect you to explain some of the phrases, you cannot do it because you don't know how to paraphrase. All right, and when you paraphrase, you think that it's the same meaning, but it's wrong. Okay, so this comes with practice as well. You still have time, continue to practice paraphrasing. Master the flowchart. Now, the flowchart is worth 4 marks, right? So 4 marks out of 20 marks. That's quite heavy weightage. And 4 marks, if you know how to manage the flowchart, it's possible to score 4 out of 4. In fact, quite a good chance. And to score out of 4, when you master the flowchart, right, and score full marks for the flowchart, it is very, very difficult to fail the narrative comprehension. But the opposite is also true. If your flowchart, you're quite weak and you tend to score 1 mark, you tend to score 0, you don't know how to approach the flowchart, then you're very likely to not do well, okay, and can fail the narrative comprehension. So please do focus on the flowchart and go back and revise. Use the final 7-8 weeks to go and really figure out how to get close to perfect answers for the flowchart. The flowchart has got helping words, so it's perfectly possible to score full marks. And also to revise all common question types, and this is not just for narrative but non-narrative as well. But for narrative, a lot of the question will be based on language. Okay, so now it's a language paper, surprise. Right, so no two way about it. You have to learn how to tackle or handle language-based questions. Right, for example here, what does the phrase suggest about the character's attitude? There are some technicalities involved. If you don't know how to form the answer to such question, go back and revise, right? Make sure you understand the technical aspects of the paper as well. Okay, so it's not just about grammar, not just about vocab. Okay, those are the foundation. But how you use that to answer the paper, right? The technicalities of it, right? For another example, which I've just usually when I teach my students a foundation of answering comprehension questions, the answer need to be accurate, specific, and complete, right? So that in itself is a technicality, right? Even if you know the correct answer, but you give slightly more words, right, that are irrelevant, you're going to get 0. Okay, so if a question asks you to identify a phrase of not more than 5 words and you give 6 words, right, then you are penalized based on technicalities, right? It's not that you identified the wrong phrase, but you gave 1 extra word, right? So always check. Okay, last but not least, we have the non-narrative comprehension, and again, this is worth a whopping 25 marks. Now, this is more straightforward, right? The text type, right? You're given some information, and because this is not story based, usually in fact all the time there are no characters involved, right? Not usually they may not involve even like any human beings in the story itself. So it could be based on facts, it could be based on certain methods, right? Certain processes, certain advantages, disadvantages, and so on, right? And a lot of these questions are info transfer with some language questions, right? So most students tend to do well to do better for the non-narrative comprehension. Now, the first part is only worth 10 marks because 15 marks has been allocated for the summary itself. So just imagine that more than half the marks come from the summary. So it would be unwise to not focus on the summary, right? Because more than half the marks, I repeat, more than half the marks come from the summary. So you do have to try to master the summary as much as you can. So I've already mentioned this, stick to basics. For info transfer questions, answers must be complete, accurate, and specific. Now, here comes an important question for the summary. Do I paraphrase or not paraphrase? So let me explain something to you. Now, for students who decide not to paraphrase for some reason, some of you may lack confidence. Every time I paraphrase, my teacher marked me wrong. This teacher say can, that teacher say maybe cannot. Your job is not get caught up in such debates. Paraphrasing, there's always room for argument because of the different types of words or the different words or expressions that we use to replace certain keywords, right? So you're wasting a lot of time, right? Getting caught up with this type of debates. So for my students, I expect them to trust me, right? I'll just give them suggestions, right? The more they trust me, the better they do, right? If they have different sources and they want to get themselves confused, that's not advisable, right? But it still happens, right? But my recommendation is for students is to at least just try it. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. And let me explain why. If you don't paraphrase, the best case scenario for the summary is 8 out of 15. That's assuming you score 8 full marks for all the points, right? And that's rarely the case that students score 8 full marks, because you tend to make some mistakes. Some of the points are invalid, some of the points are irrelevant, some of the points maybe you miss out important information, so you probably left with 5, right? And you're going to score 0 for language. So a more realistic score, if you don't paraphrase at all, is about 5 to 6 out of 15, because you get 0 for language for not paraphrasing. Okay, so 5 or 6, well, that's a failing score. And in the best case scenario is 8 out of 15, and it's still not fantastic. It's a borderline pass. And that is the reason why students must try to paraphrase. Okay, if you decide that for yourself, right, that I'm not going to do it, then just be mentally prepared for the worst, right? You're not going to do well for overall for the non-narrative comprehension, because 25 15 marks for summary, and you already just forgo a huge chunk of marks by deciding not to paraphrase. All right. So as a final reminder, right, because this is a 50 marks paper, and the time allocated is 1 hour 50 minutes. So if you go and times 2, right, change the mark to 100%, each mark is kind of like worth 2%, right? So every mark is worth 2%. That's why visual comprehension, 5 marks is still very important. Okay, 3 marks gone means 1 grade, right? 3 marks times 2, 6%, right? Every 5% is a 1 grade jump. One grade is substantial, right? So don't give up the marks. Don't give up on paraphrasing. You have to learn paraphrasing anyway to do well for your narrative, right? So why chicken out when it comes to the summary? Try to paraphrase. You will improve and over time, right? And there's still time, okay? Just practice. And with that, we have come to the end of the video, right? So I hope I've covered some of the important parts to focus on for your revision. This may not be as comprehensive as you would have liked, but hopefully it helps you out some way. All right. So if you find this video useful, do remember to leave a like and subscribe, and maybe share this video with some of your friends who may be taking O-levels this year or maybe even next year, and hopefully it will help them out as well, and it will also help out the China, right? If for those of you who are interested, to learn the language seriously, and would like to sign up for face-to-face lesson, you know where to go, right? Go to EnglishTuition.org. It has all the details there. But for those of you who can't come for lessons, which is at Bukit Panjang, right? You may want to sign up for the O-levels online course. Now, note that this is a course and not an online Zoom lesson, right? And it's a full course with the full video lessons pre-recorded together with course notes. And again, details are on my website, right? Thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the upcoming O-levels English examination. Bye-bye.